Well, hello everybody, and welcome to kind of a really unique edition of the Extra Mile podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a simulcast, the first one that we've ever done with that. It's obviously not live, but we had a really awesome experience about an hour ago, didn't we?
Oh, it was incredible. It's so fun talking to these guys. There's so much knowledge between both of them that, and plus there's such a two characters for sure. Great sense of humor. It went awesome.
By now, I'm sure if you're watching this or listening to this, you've seen the title, that we had a great time with Scott Vickery and Chris Dyer of FCA BusinessLink. And they really are, we post about this a lot, they really are the Abbott and Costello of the industry, aren't they?
Oh, without a doubt. Maybe better than Abbott and Costello.
It's in color, at least.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No black and white.
That's right.
We go all the way.
That's right. So to be able to kind of put this in perspective before we let you guys go, this is, for those of you that are football fans or sports fans in general, I guess you could say this about maybe concerts or something like that too. This was that event that you're looking forward to all week, all month, and as you're going through it, as you get started, that anticipation kind of builds, and it was just really one of those experiences sitting behind the camera, in my case, and you obviously sitting between them, that you get to that point. For us, it was about 28 or so minutes in, or football game to be in the mid-fourth quarter, where you've had a great time, and you just don't want it to end. It was really that much fun to watch these guys just go completely unscripted in this case.
Well, absolutely.
We had no questions or anything.
And it flowed very smoothly, but both of those guys are so knowledgeable, so it was just a pleasure to sit there, ask them questions, and get their feedback. I just wish I could have taken notes.
Yeah.
That was the only thing.
Well, and Scott did. He said he had eight more topics for new podcasts down the road, so hopefully this is a little bit of the start of something, a little bit of a pilot for you guys. Maybe not on video every time, but still.
Absolutely.
So let's get to it.
Hey, welcome to the Extra Mile, and we've got an incredible treat for you today. We've got two of the funniest and most knowledgeable guys I know in this whole business, and we have Scott Vickery. Scott, thank you for being here. Chris Dyer.
Yes, sir.
Just love having you guys. Knowledgeable. In fact, Scott, you've been one of our reps of the year 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
So awesome about that. I've got to do something.
What's that?
You guys kicked this thing off with an incredible, I'll call it an event. Okay? And I want you guys to explain where you came up with that and why. So, Scott, we'll start with you, and then you can hand off to Chris.
It really started off a couple of years ago as a joke. I mean, Chris and I were talking one night, and we were sharing that here we were in Orlando for an entire week away from the family. He was sharing that his wife was like, I think you guys are just down there goofing around. By meeting you mean like 2 and 3 of your buddies, and you get to go play golf. So we were trying to figure out how we show our wives, how we show them that, hey, we are truly down here working, and this is more than just 3 people sitting around a table having a meeting. And so the concept came up of, what if we got a selfie stick and did a video? And then we're like, well, that's kind of weird. How do you stand up in front of a group of 400 or 500 people with a selfie stick and do a video of yourself? And so we kind of laughed about it, and that's when Chris added in what you typically don't see on the video is the comments afterward.
Yep.
And I'll let Chris cover that.
Yeah. I mean, and you're sitting with probably one of the most digitally savvy commercial reps, of all the OEMs, and so obviously his mind immediately goes to digital when it comes to getting the crowd engaged, and of course it does, right? And so the comments really, it starts before he ever hits the record button. And we use the selfie video as a way to get everybody up, get everybody clapping, and then usually I say something just absolutely ridiculous into the camera that is only really heard when you actually watch the video. And so I've continued that tradition, I guess now for about the last 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
And it's usually whatever comes to the top of my off the top of my head. And,
This is like 2020.
Yeah, I know.
Vegas.
So, but no, that was and I think
Cool.
we came on with the selfie stick when most of them had been sold out. We had to go to a couple Walmarts to find a selfie stick to
Yeah,
purchase.
that was an adventure finding that selfie stick, but it's traveled with us well.
It has.
It has traveled with us well.
Well, it's now a tradition. So you guys are going to have to keep this up.
That's
and you're
true.
going to have to come up, you have to top it, though. You're going to have to come up with something extra.
But the funniest part about it, Ken, is after everything is said and done, and Chris turns around to the crowd, and everybody's up, they're clapping, and he looks at me, and goes, "You know what, guys? Honestly, kind of played a trick on you. No matter how this event goes, whether it's a complete bust or an absolute success, we've got video evidence of the entire crowd on their feet giving us a standing ovation,
Yeah.
and people look at us, you see their face go,
Okay.
yeah, good move, strong, liked it."
Excellent.
But, now, we had talked about taking it out of the event, but it truly is. It's fun. I think everybody enjoys it, and
Tradition.
And
Yeah.
I laugh at, like, on LinkedIn, you end up seeing people are like, hey, love the video again this year. It was the same video as the last event last year, but the reality is, it's just that it's fun. It's just it's goofy, and we have a good time.
That is
doing
true.
it.
Oh, it's great. It's genius. It is genius. I've got a powerful question, and you guys have been doing this for a while. Dealerships come into the BusinessLink program with great intentions and then kind of fizzle out. So what are the keys of the dealerships that take it to the next level and those that make excuses? So, Chris, why don't we start with you on this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think the one thing that we see is its mindset, and it starts obviously with having items on the shelf to sell, and that comes with inventory. And I think that where the mindset comes in is we see this happen all the time, and that is that a dealer will order up on inventory, and they'll truly show they're in the commercial game, and they either have a mindset of fear or a mindset of growth. And the mindset of fear says, we order these units and we get a little scared, right? That's the whole goal, is to just enough to get you worried a little bit. But usually what happens is if they've made the investment to come here, they've made the investment to bring the small business sales specialist in or bring someone like Ken in, they start to see that success. And that is the pivotal point. The pivotal point is when they see that sales success, what is the next action they take? A mindset of fear, they don't reorder. They think, oh, whew, I got out from under that.
What a relief.
What a relief.
Yes.
I got back. Let me go back to selling my Jeeps. Let me go back to selling my Dodges. The dealers that truly differentiate themselves when they sell through those vehicles, or as they start to sell through them, they start to double down, triple down. And they go from initially ordering 10, 15, 20 vehicles to then within a year you'll see a lot full of 60, 70, 80 vehicles because they have that mindset of growth. And at that point, it really becomes such a part of the DNA of the dealership that they can't take their foot off the gas. And that's truly what I think differentiates and keeps someone in the game.
Scott, anything to add to that?
I think the one thing that I look at, and Chris is right, I mean, it all starts with inventory. And a lot of times we get the question, should I have inventory or should I have the guy? I don't have a guy, so I can't order inventory. Or I can't order inventory because I don't have the guy. Whatever it may be, we get into that dilemma. And so Chris is right on the fear side. It's a lot easier, it's a lot easier to not order the inventory because you don't feel like you have somebody. But once you've ordered that inventory, you've ordered 15, 20, 25 units, and you've made a significant investment, now all of a sudden it forces you to say, I will get the guy, versus, kind of in that debating stage. And I think the key there is, but I think so many times, the thought process is, well, I've got to hire somebody, but I don't know exactly what I need. I don't know exactly the skill set that I need. So they're looking at their environment, and they've got a guy that says, I'll do it. May not be the best hire, but they're like, all right, I've got a guy. The guy knows nothing about business-to-business sales, wants to focus on it like a retail sale. I mean, does that make sense, Ken?
I see it all the time, Scott. I mean, it's so prevalent. And I talked about it in the hiring program today about, taking that guy off the showroom floor, for instance, or a guy just walks in who doesn't understand it, and he stays inside the dealership. He doesn't get out the door, and it's different kinds of fear. It's a fear of failure, but it's a fear of, what do I do?
Well, and I think, too, if you think about it from a dealer perspective, I mean, a traditional retail dealership, the sales managers are there, the sales consultants are there, and the customers are there. So it's like you have this bubble that you can operate in, and there's that force field on the front door where people think if you walk out that front door, you've now lost yourself from the force field, and you've lost control of the employees.
Yeah.
Where a lot of our business customers will never step foot inside the dealership, and so we have to have that outbound process.
Right.
And I think the other challenge that we run into when it comes down to it is we have to have that outbound process.
Yes.
And so you start talking about that outbound process in the dealership environment. I think the challenge is everybody looks at it and says, well, I've got to learn about B2B sales. It's all business to business, and how am I going to go out and find businesses and talk to businesses? And the reality, Ken, and Chris and I have talked about this at length. It is truly business to business sales, but it's people at a business buying from people at another business, and that's what we lose sight of.
Amen.
Because it's relationships. I don't need to go out and find businesses. I need to go out and find business owners. I need to find people that consume our product, that I can create a relationship, show the value of what we bring to the table, show the products that we have and how they can benefit the business and run their. It baffles me how there's such this it almost turns into a puzzle that people can't solve, and their thought process is throw your hands in there and say, you know what, I can't do it.
Yeah.
You see it all the time.
I do.
Ken, you guys have a career in helping dealerships build these departments.
Oh, exactly.
I mean,
well, it's funny because they don't think strategically, and we always start when we go into a dealership. We start out, all right, who are the orphan clients that a retail guy sold a commercial vehicle and it's in the name of the business? Start there.
Mm-hmm.
Step 2, service but not sold. Who's servicing their vehicles with us, but they bought someplace else? They already like the dealership, so we start with baby steps.
Oh yeah.
And then we start getting them out the door. Then we have them join an association, and we start meeting people at the association. You hit it. It's about people building relationships with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some magnanimous super, war strategy, and bring the tanks in and the airplanes. It's people liking people.
Oh yeah.
So, but I think you talked about it too, strategic. And I've used the example before. I had a dealership. They hired a new guy, and he was a business to business sales guy. Had a lot of relationships, but his relationships weren't centered in a radius of the dealership. They were centered all over the region.
Mm.
And so he would literally spend 3 hours driving to this customer and then 3 hours driving back. And the next day he would spend 2 hours driving here. And what it turned into was, a bad meeting was costing him 8 hours.
Days, yeah.
Days. Instead of going, all right, in a 5-mile radius of my dealership, there's 200 companies that I can go and introduce myself, my products, and my business to, versus the one guy that's 3 hours away that if I have a bad meeting, I'm out 8 hours. And when I finally, sat down with him, I'm like, dude, we really got to work on strategy. He's like, oh, that makes sense. Let's do something there.
Great point. And Chris, I know you've seen it. And what if you were going to counsel them about starting out, a starting point?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you start them?
So I would say, let's assume they've got the basics. They've got some inventory.
Okay.
Maybe they've, because I think that's step one no matter what is, if you're looking at this as a dealer principal, you're looking at this as a commercial salesperson or someone looking at getting into commercial sales, the first thing to look at is, has the dealership made the investment in the product that you're going to sell? Because the math is pretty simple. We see a turn rate of 25 to 30% of inventory in a given month. If you've got 8 vehicles, well, those are your numbers, right? If you've got 100 vehicles, you're setting yourself up to have a little bit more success. But I think that once you've got the inventory on the ground, the biggest thing is, and we say this up on stage, is getting the commercial customer to the commercial manager as fast as possible. And I know that with commercial truck training, and with your process, you go to the customer, so there's no way that customer can enter the relationship without having come into contact with a commercial sales consultant or a commercial sales manager. But for the dealerships that haven't made that investment in sending someone outside, it's very important that when you have that person come in on a chassis cab or a ProMaster, that you get it to the person you've invested all this time and effort and training, because they understand how not only the nuts and bolts of the vehicles, but on the commercial selling process. Because as Scott mentioned, selling to a business owner is very different than selling to a retail customer.
But Chris, you bring up a good point there, and Ken, you and I have had this conversation before.
Yes.
So, two schools of thought.
Mhm.
I have to hire an outside sales guy to go out and knock on doors, introduce my product, my service, my business to people. The other thought is I never want my commercial guy to leave the dealership, because what happens if somebody walks into the dealership and he's not here? I'm a firm believer that you have to have a rock solid inside person before you can have an effective outside person.
100% agree.
And there's a balance there, because we can't do everything inside and we can't do everything outside. And that's something that Chris and I have talked a lot about, and you've talked about it in your training as well.
Yeah.
How does that balance look? I mean, where do you see it?
It's kind of interesting. What we look for, ideally, what we would like is a commercial manager and 2 salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
One salesperson in, one salesperson out, and either alternate days or every 2 days. So there's always someone to take care of the commercial customer, because inevitably, and it's usually the rookie retail sales guy who grabs it, doesn't want to let go,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't know anything about commercial trucks. The business owner realizes right away, and he says, "I'll give back to you," which means you'll never see me again.
Exactly.
And that's what happens. So ideally too, but I agree with you. What the next step is, what we'll do with a lot of dealerships, and I'm getting ready to do this with San Antonio Dodge, actually. We found a young guy in the dealership who really wants to be an outside guy, but we're going to make him the inside guy for right now. He's going to have to take all of the BusinessLink training. He's going to have to take all the programs.
Learn the ropes.
Yeah, and then when Eddie Wu is out on sales calls.
Love Eddie.
Eddie is. Eddie's a character. Just there last week. While Eddie's out, he'll be there to handle the customer, and we'll know enough where we don't lose that sale. So.
And I think that's probably one of the most important things that we're missing in a lot of stores is that balance.
Yeah.
Having somebody
agree.
there that can answer the question, somebody that can educate the customer, but also somebody that can go out, knock on doors, and create the opportunity.
Yes.
And I think it's also important that the dealers understand they don't have to start with a commercial sales manager and 2 sales consultants.
No.
I think what you're doing with San Antonio Dodge is a perfect example
Yep.
of crawling before you walk,
Right.
and then walking before you run. And I think that you will, if you can train from the inside somebody to start, with the incoming leads based on the inventory you have, based on your
Yeah.
digital process, and then work them into that managerial role or that outside
agree.
sales role. It's a nice way to really start to organically grow a commercial department.
Well, but I think you just brought up something there, Chris. You talked about the digital process, driving traffic.
Mhm.
And, that's a conversation that we've had as well. When you start looking at, does it make sense for me to guarantee an outside sales consultant $4,000 a month to get them up and running versus spending that $4,000 a month driving digital traffic and leads in on the inventory that I've invested in and having a solid process in the dealership? I think that's part of that balance, because we do have to take digital into account.
Right.
How can we use, our third-party lead providers like Commercial Truck Trader and Work Truck Solutions to help integrate into the process, drive leads in, effectively manage them, but then also to have that outside person bringing in, periphery stuff that doesn't come through that channel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. And in fact, it's kind of interesting, and I'll use San Antonio Dodge as an example. I said you have to join the home builders, and not an option.
Mm-hmm.
So they did. The dealership bought in. We were meeting with them this week. We got their list. We got all the email addresses. We're putting those into our format. Will is handling that, and they're going to receive our flyers. They're going to receive connections to our inventory. They're going to receive the newsletter, promoting Eddie and the department. And we know what's going to happen. The calls will start coming in. So you're exactly right on that. It's a combination of digital. It's a combination of being out. It's a combination of joining associations. This morning I brought up BNI in one of our meetings. One of the guys raised his hand. He said, "Yeah, I get leads every week out of BNI." So a lot of it's working smarter too, Scott. I mean, combining all. That's what we're doing at San Antonio Dodge. We're combining exactly what you're saying: digital, associations, group settings. Because if it's one guy, the group makes sense.
Yeah.
You go to those meetings and see 4, 5, 6 different people that you meet. And we have requirements. I asked Susan Smith, who is the executive director of the San Antonio Home Builders, Susan, if Eddie asks you to introduce him to someone, would you be willing to help us? She said, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And then I asked her, how many leads come in where people are asking about commercial trucks? She said, Kent, every month. I said, who do those go to? He said, well, right now, if you guys are as active as I think you're going to be, they're probably going to go to you, because we have 2 other dealerships that don't even come to the meetings, but they're members.
Well, and that goes back to our, conversations before. I mean, you can't just join an association and not attend. That you're paying membership dues at that point. And, Chris and I both spent time at Enterprise Fleet Management. The enterprise model was you go, you join as many committees, whether it's membership committee, finance, events, whatever the committee you could get on was the one you got on. So that you could get engaged with with the members, and you almost treat it as I'm not going to say a recruiting tool, but it gave you an opportunity to talk to every new member. Hey, what do you do? What do you do? Next thing you know, you're talking about business.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a crazy concept, but
Whoa! Wait a minute. We're going to build relationships. We're going to share ideas, and you're going to like me. And you're probably going to buy it from me.
Probably, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
But it can, and I've said it for years. If you look at marketing and the way that business is going, I mean, digital is absolutely a huge aspect of what we need to do. And if you look at it from digital retailing, and I read an article last night about NADA. In the last several years at NADA, there's been a lot of new products, and we're going to change the world, and we've got a silver bullet. And this year, the article kind of said that people have stepped back from those new products and those silver bullets, saying, we've got to look at basics, we've got to look at fundamentals, and we've got to look at products that actually, we can attribute. Where did this lead come from? How did the traffic come in? Is it last touch? Whose attribute? How are we going to look at it? But the reality, I think, that it really comes down to is there is not technology on earth that can replace a warm smile, a firm handshake, and a genuine hello.
Absolutely.
Sitting across from somebody, sharing a cup of coffee. And that is what I think we're missing today, because the answer that a lot of people want to do is, well, let's throw money at it. Chris, can I get some co-op budget? Let's double down on this.
Yep.
Guys, we can double down on anything we want to, but if we're driving leads into the dealership and somebody is not there catching them and nurturing them, we're never going to see results from it.
Oh.
I'm sitting here laughing. One of these days, I'm going to get passionate about this business again. I'll figure it out.
Gosh, I was going to kind of mention that. You're so laid back, and
liven it up a little bit.
Wow.
It's crazy, because then I have to share that I was at a truck club, speaking at a truck club meeting about 4 years ago, and I was talking about targeted marketing. That the worst thing you can do is send out a 3,000 piece mail. Because it's going to cost you a fortune, and you're going to get very little results. A friend of mine, Richard Bisso.
Know Richard well?
Yep. Walked up to me, and he said, Ken, we did that about 2 months ago, and it's been a total failure. I said, it's targeted. Well, we tell our dealerships, why don't we send out 10 pieces at a time and then follow up with it and stay on top of it? But you've hit it right on the nose. It's moving to a digital age. More of the business owners are millennials that are taking over businesses. They understand technology. They understand why they text. They understand the internet, and they're attracted to people who have the same understanding.
But I will say this, is that the investment in digital is very important, but what it still comes back to is having someone that you feel is a trusted advisor on the other end of the phone. Because we see this over and over. The arms race is getting the lead. But the folks who convert that lead at a much higher rate are the folks that have invested in someone who not only has the personal skills, but also the knowledge to make that person feel comfortable about their purchase. Because the one thing that is happening in the car business is that it's changing, and whether that be the technology that's required, whether that be the know-how on just how to use the center console, or use the various features on the vehicles. And even with the folks taking over businesses that are that millennial age, they still value that person that they can go to as an expert to help them with those additional elements that they can't find behind the keys of the keyboard.
No,
but I think, Chris, you hit it on the head when you start talking about that. You mentioned like your car buying experience. You and Rachel wanted to buy a new car. I don't want to go to the dealership. Chris, you're in the business. I know, but I still don't want to go to the dealership.
Well, I went to my local dealer and they tried to rake me over the coals.
But
Remember me?
I'm your rep. But no, we laugh about it. But you look at like Carvana, and everybody says, "Oh, Carvana's business model, it's horrible. They lost hundreds of millions of dollars." But you know what else happened? 97,000 people last year hated the dealership buying experience enough to go to Carvana and purchase a vehicle.
Amen.
That to me says, I don't care if that's the perfect model, that's the perfect model. I don't know that it is, or I don't know that it's not. But the reality is you had almost 100,000 people that said, I dislike the current model enough to be able to do something different. And I think, from the millennial side of it, Chris and I joke about it all the time. I mean, we're good friends, but, from an age standpoint, we're a few years apart.
Few.
Few. It's all good. But it's,
Which one's younger? I'm not.
Leave it at that.
Let the YouTube comments
Exactly. But it is funny because it's working with Chris and with Mark and Tim and the rest of our team. I think it's forced me to think about things differently too. Being a little bit older, coming up in an era where we didn't have a lot of the digital stuff, we didn't have the tools and the texting and stuff. I did a presentation a few years ago in my business plan, and we were talking about, is Facebook gonna solve commercial sales? Yes, no, maybe, whatever. Is Instagram gonna be the next thing? Is it gonna be Snapchat? Is it gonna be woo-woo? Who knows? And honestly, who cares? But the reality is, as younger people come up through the system, if they're comfortable communicating with Snapchat, and that's how they want to be communicated with, then we need to communicate with them on Snapchat.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying that it's Snapchat. What I'm saying is, if there's a preferred communication method, then we need to use that. I'll give you a great example of that. We preach it in our trainings, and I know you guys talk about it a lot. I had to get a console recovered, so we went to a local upholsterer company in Birmingham. And walked in. I already had the console apart. I thought, installing a console, it can't be that bad. You just put the stuff over it, put a couple staples. Yeah, not so much. That's an art. So took it to him, and the young lady wrote up the ticket, and she said, Mr. Vickery, I just have a quick question for you. Would you prefer to be communicated with via phone, email, or text? And I said, honestly, text would be fantastic. She said, great. She circled text, handed me my ticket, and I walked out the door. About 10 minutes later, I had a text from her. Hey, Scott, this is Julianne, blah, 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 blah. Talk to the tech. It's going to be about this much money. We can have it ready on Friday as promised if that's acceptable for you. Absolutely perfect.
Wow.
Thank you.
I love
Boom.
that.
The decision was made. It was easy
I got to
for me.
write that down.
Yeah.
It was
Video,
easy.
you're good.
But it was easy to communicate, and she did exactly what I asked her to do.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
The
Ken,
way she wanted to receive it.
if your phone rings right now, can you answer it?
No.
No.
We've already had one phone call stop this.
Right. But that's my point. So many times we focus on, hey, Chris, I'm going to call you.
Yeah.
Dude, you don't want to call me. I mean, my phone goes off all day.
Yeah.
Hundreds of text messages, emails, phone calls. But I think that's where we have to do a better job of understanding the communication and giving people the option of telling us how they want to do business with us.
Yeah.
Again, kind of a novel concept.
Novel but classic.
Yes.
Correct.
Novel but classic. Chris, why don't you wrap us up here? And I'm going to hit you with a very easy question.
Okay. I like softballs.
Again, dealership calls
Mm-hmm.
and they say, hey, we want to get to this commercial thing.
Okay.
And if you had to give them just two or three steps to ensure that they're going to do it correctly, what advice would you give them?
Gotcha. All right. So I think you'll find a theme to my comments here.
Okay.
So step one is inventory. If you're not willing to make the investment in inventory,
Good.
you're not willing to be a true commercial dealership. The second is invest in your people. And dealerships, I think, have all these different investments that they can make to grow their business, whether it's upfitted lifestyle trucks or mobile service. And but the one element I would say that would sway a dealership towards the commercial sales and fleet role is that in the long run, it's recession proof. I mean, these businesses are going to need vehicles Because as Scott talks about in the training, these are tools. These are core foundational tools to someone's business. If you told an HVAC company that they had to carry the air handlers on their back, the business would be out of business. And so,
or HVAC company, what are you going to do? Drive or have an autonomous vehicle go out on a service call?
Exactly.
Can't do it.
Yep.
You have to have a technician in that vehicle. And so, to your point, I mean, technology and everything that's happening really kind of isolates where we are and the growth opportunities.
And so the purpose of that comment was more to say so that if you're a dealer principal or a general manager and you're looking at where you can make investments to grow your business, and not only to grow your business, but to grow your business in a segment where the competition is less than just selling more Jeep Wranglers or selling more, Challengers or Chargers. The fleet and commercial business is a great place to find niches of business that you can own and not only perform well in your dealer marketing area, but perform well regionally, if not nationally. And so it's having the inventory and having a dealer principal who is truly invested and willing to make that investment not only in the inventory but in the people and in the process.
Oh, good point. I was 4 or 5 years ago. I was meeting with Ray Huffines.
Okay, yeah.
Of Huffines in Texas, the owner, and Ray said something very interesting. He said, "Ken," he said, "the future of our business is in commercial and fleet."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Here's why I'm saying that." He said, "The retail side, the grosses are dropping dramatically." He said, "The money's not there. We're all on the same footing. Commercial and fleet is a way to set ourselves apart." And that's exactly what we're saying.
Well, and think about the blurred lines, too. I mean, 10 years ago, if I were to tell you that, people were buying cars and driving strangers around, right, for extra income, you would have called me crazy. I mean,
we called that hitchhiking when I was a kid.
Yeah, my parents. That's what my parents told me not to do. Don't get in a stranger's car, right?
Oh, God,
much less pay them for the ride, And so I think that what is really unique about our business is that line between retail and commercial is being erased. There are people, I think, that you'll see by the time we get to 2030, the majority of people purchasing vehicles, that vehicle will not only be used for retail purposes of transportation, but there will be some type of business element, whether it be deliveries or or advertising or sales or whatever it may be. And I think that that's exciting. If I'm sitting here and I'm a commercial dealer and I used to think I had to have white vans and white trucks, and now instead I'm finding new ways to sell Renegades or Wranglers or Grand Cherokees using the business to business model. It's a great place to be for a dealer.
Well, and I think that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier today. A lot of dealers do extremely well selling white trucks, white cargo vans, that commercial vehicle mentality,
Right. Mm-hmm.
rather than stepping back and saying, you know what, our process is designed to create relationships and work on that sales to a business owner, regardless of whether they have 1 vehicle, 20 vehicles, or 100 vehicles. Because that brings up a whole nother realm of questions. I mean, we could have an entire another podcast on buckets.
Oh, yeah.
Business, retail, commercial, fleet, government.
Mixed use.
Exactly. How those, which incentives we use, which programs we use, from a manufacturing standpoint, which bucket we pull those vehicles from. It's crazy when you look at it. And one of the things I wanted to add to Chris's answer on that, I think service is something that we really overlook a lot of times when we're talking about it from the commercial side of it. Because no matter what survey you look at, when a small business owner has a vehicle down, it's costing them money. Okay, I don't care if it's $1 or $10,000 a day. If that vehicle is not operating, it's costing them money.
Revenue into the business.
Okay. So if you think about it, do they still have to pay their employee? Absolutely. They're still paying benefits. They're still paying rent. They're still paying light bills. They're still marketing. They're still advertising. And the crazy part is they still have customers that are expecting to be serviced, and that tech may be down, or the employee can't get to them. So now they've got customer service issues and all of these things. So for them, it goes back to what we say all the time. It's not about how much it is to get my vehicle back on the road. We have to be competitive. I'm not saying that you can charge whatever you want to service a business owner's vehicle. You have to be competitive. But I think giving them options. Mr. Customer, I got a couple different options for you. Okay, this part is currently not available overnight. Okay, this is what I can do for you. I can get it overnighted, but it's going to have to come from the California Parts Depot. It's going to cost an additional $36. I can have the vehicle for you tomorrow at 4. If you don't want to pay the $36, I can have it Wednesday at 4. Which one works best for you and your business? At that point, we've given them an option. They've got an understanding of what we're doing, and they feel like we're working with them instead of against them.
And 95% of the time, they're going to take the more expensive option because
Yep.
time, the day that truck's off the road costs them far more than that $36.
Significantly more, and that's opportunity for more profit for the dealership too.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And think about the word of mouth there.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
when you
gosh.
think about it from a retail standpoint, you look at an average RO or whatever the number is. You've got Express Loop. Do we need Express Loop? 100%, and I think that's important to a dealership. But do I want to build an Express Loop facility, or do I want to build 5 commercial bays that I can run diesel trucks through? Where ROs are twice as much and they come twice as often. I'm not real good at math. You put a dollar sign in front of it, Ken, I can figure it out.
I've always said the most profitable customer to a dealership is the business customer.
Yeah.
By far. Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah,
Both
thank
of
you.
guys.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys do an awesome job. And Will Brogan and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we're looking forward to many more years.
No, we always enjoy hanging out with you guys.
Oh, yeah.
And picking your brain, get some insight from you.
Great. God
Amen.
bless. Thank you so
Hear,
much.
hear.
Thank you.
So, now that you're on this side of the camera, kind of, what'd you think?
Extremely valuable information because it was down to earth. It was frontline information. These are guys that have been to war. They know what it's like out there in the streets, what it's like to try to grow the business. And to get their perspective from the manufacturer side was so incredible. And I specifically asked questions that should appeal to every dealership. How do you get started? What are the 3 or 4 keys in really making this happen when you're trying to grow a commercial department? So it should be very valuable for anybody who's new at this, but really anybody who's struggling, has been at it for a while, and said, well, how come we're not growing? The answer, I think, was in this segment for sure.
Yeah, keys to inventory, keys to marketing, keys to making the right efforts. Scott pointed out a lot of great things that we teach in our boot camps, obviously, as Chris did too, but some stuff that's coming down the line for me that we're going to be talking about a lot in some digital marketing courses that we touched on too. So that was really, really phenomenal. I hope everybody really watches this probably 2, 3, 4 times, whether it's listening on the Extra Mile or doing this on our YouTube channel as well. We're going to share it across everything.
Yeah, it's a half hour well spent.
Very much so. So thank you guys for joining us and watching this far. And we've got some superstars coming to see us, so we're going to cut it off. But thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.